Now that we've finished cleaning our walls, sanding our walls, wiping down any residual dust and masking, we're ready to start applying primer. Now, much in the same case as the caulk, there's a great variety of primer out there in the market, and I'm going to help you navigate through it. For this basic application where there's no great stains that I'm concerned about, just some repairs that we want to cover up, I'm using a universal acrylic primer. If we had some heavier duty stains such as smoke or ink, I might choose a quick dry oil-based primer, and I could hit some of those spots with a brush. I wouldn't have to do the entire wall. That type of product also comes in a latex base, which is a little less odor. And for severe stains, knots, crayons, ink, fire, smoke, water damage, I always advocate, if you're concerned about the stain bleeding through, shellac base primer. The reason why I chose this particular primer for this application is there are just a couple of repairs I made that I wanted to cover, and what I did is I had them tint the primer to the approximate finish coat, and that will help our coverage. It'll also give us a basic idea of how the finished product is going to look. The first application of primer we're going to cut in just as if we were going to paint. We're doing full coverage with the primer. So I'm going to use a metal pot for ease and workability. I'm not going to put a lot of paint in here because I don't need a lot of paint in here. I'm going to fill it up about a quarter of the way. I'm going to clean my face, clean my lip. I'm going to go back and dry brush the face and the lip again. I'm going to set my gallon of paint aside and out of the way. Now what I want to do, just like in the caulk when we used less caulk and worked our way up, I want to just dip slightly into the paint, and there's two methods. I'm going to tack the excess paint on the sides, and I'm going to remove the rest of the excess paint on the lip. Now if you feel like you still have too much here to work with, you can go right ahead and tack some more. Now you might think that I don't have enough paint on my brush, but I have more than enough to start cutting in. Now I'm not going to start at the bottom. I'm going to start a little bit above my cut-in surface so I can work my paint down. And as far as distance, you don't need much more than 2 inches. Should be adequate for your roller. Now we're ready to start cutting in our ceiling. I always like to work with a smaller ladder. 4 foot is perfect, ideal for an 8-foot ceiling. I'm going to start below the ceiling line. I'm going to work off some of my excess paint, and now I'm going to attempt my cut. Now I'm going to smooth out the bottom, and I have at least 3 inches here of room to roll. I filled my paint tray up about halfway, maybe a little less. I always work with a large metal paint tray for several reasons. One, it's just easier to work with. It holds a lot of paint, and it's heavy and sturdy. It's not likely to move like your cheaper plastic ones. Now for this purpose, I'm going to use a small extension pole. It's quite handy, and it's very easy to extend and lock in. We'll start up top, and we just want to add small increments of paint. I do not want to saturate my roller. Right, what I'm working with is a 3/8 inch roller, which is perfect for this application. But I just want to incrementally take small amounts of paint until the roller is covered. Next, I'm going to lose a little bit of the excess, and we're always going to start in the middle and with a bit of a W pattern. By no means do you have to make a perfect kindergarten W, but that's the general pattern we want to stay in to lose some of the excess. You really want to avoid starting at the top or starting at the bottom because it's very difficult to smooth out your excess paint. This way, I'm working toward my cut-in surface, and by the time I arrive at the top, I have the perfect amount of paint. Now, since we're using a high-quality acrylic primer, there's very low splatter coming off of my roller. But our stellar tape job is picking up any splatter on our shelf. So I'm rolling with a peace of mind. Now, things that you have to be concerned about here, we want to avoid any of our rolling lines of excess paint that may occur on the edges. So if we see any, and we want to be constantly aware of that, because that will affect the overall appearance of our paint job. We want to make sure the paint is completely flat and uniform. And since we have a bit of a difficult area to roll here, it's very easy to remove the handle and roll in as opposed to up and down or vertically. Now that we've primed our surface, we're going to allow this primer to dry for approximately 3 hours, more or less depending on humidity. And once that primer, we're confident after 3 hours, is completely dry, we're going to hit the entire surface again with our large sponge medium grit sanding block, just to make sure we knock down any imperfections and any high-low spots that might be remaining on the wall. Then our surface is completely professionally ready for a coat of paint.